A year ago, Putin began the process of killing his empire. Even his entourage did not believe that he would dare such an invasion. Political scientists vied with each other howling sirens, arguing that he is not crazy, and nullified themselves. Putin has made up his mind. In order to understand its logic, you need to feel on which edge of insanity the patient is balancing at the moment. Biden's sudden visit to Kyiv knocked down the defendant, and on February 21, Putin looked pale and confused. But already on the 22nd, either he, or his double, showed in Sotnik-TV a self-confident leader, smeared with fascist drugs before a nuclear eruption. God be with them, twins. Were there doubles in the stands too? Doubles of the people, depicting the Nazis? It was the people themselves. And let the Kremlin lie that 200,000 people came with a capacity of 81 Sotnik-TV. The Kremlin always lies. But the stands were full. And no one drove these 80,000 real organisms into the stands under machine guns. They waved the flags themselves, with all their generous souls. After publicly anointing the post-Soviets with fascist shit, Biden's speech in Warsaw sounded much more convincing. There was no doubt that this was not a war of Putin alone or his entourage. This is a hellish project of the entire Russian people, seeking to take revenge for the humiliations suffered after the collapse of the Soviet Empire. Never after Stalin, who unleashed the Second World War with Hitler, did this poor-bearing people receive such a tough and gray-haired leader. Khrushchev is a loser maze, Brezhnev is a mumbling senile, Andropov is a normal man, but he quickly died. Chernenko is a zero that never passes into consciousness, Gorbachev is a traitor, Yeltsin is a wino. And here she is, a native sprat, smelling of feces, came from the Neva banks, and gun does it from under the fence, and thinks on a hair dryer, there to wet, here, to squeeze. And Crimea was squeezed out, handsome, and Donbass. Now we will reach Kyiv, and then Minsk will fall into its own hands. So we will restore the USSR under the banner of Putin's victory. The leader's isolation from the realities on the ground, from the degree of corrosion and degradation of the system at all levels, led to the adoption of erroneous decisions, which, in strategic terms, became catastrophic. Subtotal, Kyiv is not taken, neither in 3 days, nor in 3 months. During the year of the war, Russia has turned into a pariah, erased with an eraser from the political map of the world. Its prospect is only defeat in the war, with further variability, but not in favor of the population, which, as an aggressor, will bear full responsibility for the atrocities and inhumanity shown by them in this war. Putin's last hope is in China, which came up with a 12-point plan to resolve the war. As Biden advisor Sullivan rightly noted, after the first point, about respecting the sovereignty of all nations, one could stop. But the trick is that the remaining 11 points are not about Ukraine, but about the interests of China itself, which looks like an absolute beneficiary in this meat grinder. No one has benefited as much as China has. Weakened by political and economic sanctions, Moscow is becoming more and more tied to Beijing financially and energetically, and soon it may even kneel before the smiling panda. Spiegel writes about the possibility of China supplying 100 kamikaze drones to Russia, and this is an alarming sign, but should the Chinese comrades take the slippery slope of sanctions? Putin doesn't care anymore. He put the forces of his nuclear triad on full alert, and even if in the West faith in his ability to gasp with something nuclear is lowered, he will still surprise everyone, after which many will exclaim, "Here's a son of a bitch." How do we not take into account the degree of his obstinacy? Over the past year, Putin has learned a major lesson: you can't trust anyone. The money will be stolen, they will lie on the reports, and even lead to the adoption of erroneous decisions, the responsibility for which will be placed on you. Therefore, from now on, he listens only to himself, and he himself is a mentally worn-out individual, with very specific ideas about reality and his role in this sinful world. No money? Shake fat wallets or turn on the machine, print. People are no longer new oil, but endless stuffing that prolongs the war. The main thing is not to lose. There will be no capitulation. At a minimum, it is necessary to wear out Ukraine, preventing its quick unconditional victory. humanity has come to what it abandoned at Nuremberg. Fascism of the 20th century has crawled into the 21st through a virus transmitted from Soviet grandfathers to post-Soviet descendants. It was their leader Stalin, in an embrace with Hitler, who started the Second World War, and it was he who was supposed to sit in the dock next to Goering and Keitel, but he managed to put on the crown of triumph, pretending to be an anti-fascist. Many decades later, this virus revived and developed, again staining the European continent with blood, and now it must be destroyed completely, together with the carrier country. Putin is a continuation of Stalin and Hitler. What is happening today is a conditional February 1945, with the only difference being that Hitler did not have nuclear weapons, while Putin does. And he can use it. But even if this happens, it is necessary to respond in such a way that nothing remains of the fascist system, and the Hague Tribunal will make historical and legal assessments of what happened.